All right. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Glenn Osaki. I'm a vice chair for the Asia Pacific Islander Faculty and Staff Association. It's good to see our group here with us today at Doheny Library, as well as to have our guests here on Zoom today. Before we kick things off, though, I wanted to provide a land acknowledgement, as we always like to do. USC APIFSA wishes to acknowledge that our campus and our city are located on historical Tovangar, the land of the indigenous communities of the Los Angeles Basin. We pay our respects and gratefully acknowledge the native peoples on whose ancestral homelands we gather, as well as the diverse and vibrant native communities who make their home here today. We honor their traditions, identities, and stories, which are far too often ignored and erased. Thank you. In addition, I want to remind our audience here in the room, as well as on Zoom, that the university is prohibited from endorsing or supporting any candidates for political office, and the discussion today is not a campaign event. Okay, so it is definitely my pleasure to welcome you all to Industry and Identity, which is USC APIFSA's signature speaker series, which invites leaders to share about their API identity and how it impacted their career journeys. Today's event occurs during Filipino American History Month, which was started in 1991 by the Filipino American National Historical Society to commemorate the arrival of the first Filipinos to what is now Morro Bay on the Central California coast. While you may typically see Filipino spelled with an F, the organizing group has adopted the use of the P in Filipino to reclaim the indigenous language. USC's Filipino History Month events have been jointly organized by APIFSA, the Office of Religious and Spiritual Life, USC Libraries, Troy Philippines, and APAS. We hope to see many of you tomorrow at the closing reception in Nazarian Plaza starting at 5 p.m., which is the culminating celebration for PAHM at USC. Also on this day, I wanted to acknowledge the Indian community who are celebrating Diwali. So a very important and ceremonial day for Indians and South Asians all across the world. Great. So now, without further ado, it is definitely my privilege to kick off the event today and to introduce today's participants. Rob Bonta is currently the 34th Attorney General of the great state of California. His biography demonstrates a through line for the desire for equity and justice. A.G. Bonta was born in Quezon City in the Philippines and immigrated with his family at 2 months old following President Marcos's declaration of martial law in that country. His parents eventually moved to a trailer in La Paz, the famed headquarters of the United Farm Workers of America, where they worked alongside Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, and Philip Veracruz. This influenced his decision to become a lawyer, to help right historic wrongs and fight for people who have been harmed. He went on to attend Yale for undergrad and law school. Prior to his appointment as Attorney General by Governor Newsom, A.G. Bonta was the first Filipino American in California state history to be elected to the California State Legislature, representing Assembly District 18, which includes Oakland, Alameda, and San Leandro. And before that, he served as a deputy district attorney in the San Francisco City Attorney's Office. So please welcome California's first Filipino American Attorney General, Rob Bonta. And in conversation with A.G. Bonta is our very own Beong-Soo Kim. Beong was appointed Senior Vice President and General Counsel at USC in July 2022. Beong oversees all of USC's legal affairs and directs the Office of the General Counsel, which provides legal and strategic advice across all of USC's administrative functions, schools, and departments, as well as Keck Medicine of USC. Reporting directly to President Folt, Beong works closely with the other members of her leadership team, the Board of Trustees, and stakeholders from across the university. Beong holds an undergraduate degree from Harvard College, a Master of Science degree from the London School of Economics, and a law degree from Harvard Law School. And perhaps what's most interesting and impressive are the parallel paths that Beong's and A.G. Bonta's careers have followed. Both attended college around the same time, then studied in England for a year before returning to their Ivy League alma maters for law school. And like A.G. Bonta, Beong also worked in law enforcement, having served as a federal prosecutor for almost 9 years prior to coming to USC. So now, with some trepidation over this either becoming a love fest or a Yale Law versus Harvard Law debate, I'm going to turn it over to you, Beong. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn, and thank you, Attorney General Bonta, for being here with us today. I know that you wanted to be here in person, but circumstances didn't work out that way. But you're no stranger to the USC campus. I just saw you a month or so ago at the LA Sustainability Summit here on campus, and it was really during that address that I first learned about your remarkable upbringing and parents. And Glenn talked about you growing up. You're growing up in La Paz alongside labor leaders such as Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. My first question is, what was it like being part of that community as a Filipino American and Asian American? Did it feel unusual or even a little bit lonely?
Well, thank you, Beong, for the question, and I'm super excited to be here. I just want to say thank you to Glenn and the USC agents. I'm not on mute, right? Okay. I always have to check that. Thank you to the USC Asian Pacific Islander Faculty and Staff Association, the USC Gold School of Law, and USC University Relations for hosting the event. I'm excited to be here and to be with you. I wish I could be with you in person, and let's schedule that for another time in the future. But to your question about being Filipino American in La Paz and as part of the farm worker movement, the sort of heart and soul, the anchor, the special sauce, the magic of the UFW movement was the coalitions, the bringing people together across race and ethnicity, seeming differences, but committed to a common cause. And that's what made it great. That's what made it special. That's what allowed for the farm workers to be successful, because they broke the previous pattern of having one community pitted against the other. When the Agricultural Workers Organizing Committee, led by Larry Itliong, started the Delano grape strike in 1965, the typical response from the growers would be to bring in other workers, Latino workers, to do the work that the Filipino workers weren't doing, and vice versa. When Mexican and Latino workers would go on strike, to bring in the Filipino workers, pit them against one another. But when they joined forces, they couldn't be beat. They were unbeatable. And so the fact of being Filipino American, while perhaps numerically less common, certainly was not strange. It was comfortable. It was part of who the movement is and was and wanted to be and aspired to be, a movement of coalitions, of people coming together despite their differences, committed to something that we all saw so clearly: the pursuit for justice for those who weren't treated with the dignity and respect that they deserve. So that has stuck with me ever since then. The power of coalitions, of working together, of collaboration, of partnership, of seeking and finding common ground whenever possible. So I'm proud of the through line, legacy, and history of Filipino Americans in the farm worker movement. It's something that I wanted to uplift and share with more people in California and in this country. And something that I did as a legislator, one of my first acts was to have the contributions of Filipino Americans to the California farm labor movement be taught in California public schools. It is now taught in California public schools because I think I wanted that because I believed it was powerful, inspirational, something that would inspire others to fight and lead and lead in the way the farm workers did, with coalitions and across differences committed to a common cause. So it was not awkward at all to be Filipino American. It was very natural and very much part of the DNA of the movement.
Thank you so much, and thanks to your efforts, A.G. Bonta, I think we all recognize better now the contributions of people like Philip Veracruz and other diverse leaders who are part of that movement. Glenn mentioned some of your educational opportunities, going back east to Yale for college and for law school, and as both of us know, when you graduate from an elite university, whether it's Yale or USC, you have so many opportunities, many of which might be more lucrative than public service. I know that you did a brief stint in private practice where nowadays you can probably make more money as a junior associate than you can as an associate justice of the Supreme Court. And so I wanted to ask you, was it difficult personally deciding to forego some of those opportunities and instead dedicate so much of your career to public service?
Not for me. Every person is different, and every person is driven by their own passion and mission. And my passion and mission was to serve. It always has been. It's part of the air I breathe, and it's in my DNA. It's part of my family, my family's history. It's something I always wanted to do, and it's something that I wanted to do before I knew I wanted to do it. It was something that was instilled in me from a young age, and maybe subconsciously from my parents, until I was able to explicitly recognize what moved me to want to help others and serve. But it was hard for me to be in private practice, to be honest. I was always wanting, looking for the mission, the service, the improvement of our society, the lifting up of people, making lives better. And I wanted to do that at the largest scale possible. And in private practice, I was part of one of the best firms in the state and in the country, and we were everything for our clients in the cases that we were involved in. I also got involved in pro bono cases, a big statewide case dealing with racial profiling practices of a statewide agency. And that was very rewarding and fulfilling for me, and also cemented and crystallized for me that my future would be in more explicit public service work. The hardest thing when it comes to probably, just pure financial decisions was the mountain of student loan debt that I and my wife were under when we got out of college and law school. My wife grew up super poor in New York City and raised by a single mom. A lot of times at the end of the month, there was more rent than paycheck, and her mom wasn't able to fill the fridge except for having just celery and peanut butter. And she would tell her daughter, we're going to go on a special diet for a little while, sweetheart, as she waited for her next paycheck to come in so she could fill the fridge. And education was Mia's pathway out out of poverty and to be able to realize her dreams and meet her full potential. And student loans were a big part of opening up those doors. We both went to Yale College. We both went to Yale Law School. We came out of both with a ton of debt. And so one of my first goals was to pay it off as soon as possible and to free up our decision-making to be able to do what we loved. And for both of us, that's always been public service. We're partners in life, partners in service, love helping others and working towards the common good. And so for me, the decision was never a difficult one in terms of weighing what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to serve. It was just a matter of which role, helping which communities. But there are financial realities in all of our lives. And if you're able to address those, and not everyone can, but if you are, and enable yourself to do what you love, I think we're all best at what we love to do and fulfilled and happy when we do it.
Notwithstanding your and your wife's efforts, Asian Americans, and including in particular Filipino Americans, are still underrepresented at the highest levels of government, as well as in many other industries. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts for this audience as to why that might be, and how we could improve on that situation.
I think it's changing, and I think it's important to be intentional, deliberate, strategic, and focused in identifying areas of underrepresentation and seeking to remedy them. I think more and more we're seeing more folks in public service in the Filipino American community, and sometimes it's not possible until you see it. People don't think certain positions are for them until they see someone like them in those positions. And so those firsts are important, and breaking those barriers and kicking down those doors and then holding them open behind you so that more can come through is so critical. And so I was both excited and disappointed that I was the first Filipino American state legislator in the history of California. After over 150 years of this state having legislators representing the full spectrum of diversity, purportedly of this state, and at the time Filipinos being the largest Asian American group in the state of California, the fastest growing, it was too long. We shouldn't have had to wait that long. But it's always important to have that breakthrough, to pierce that glass ceiling. And so maybe more people think that they can serve in the legislature too. And we certainly have a lot of city council members and mayors and school board members and special district leaders who are Filipino Americans who are doing great work throughout the state and throughout the country. So these things take time. And right now we are in a period of change and transformation where more and more Filipino Americans are pursuing their dreams to serve in public service and in public office, and are stepping up and are getting elected and are representing us in more ways than ever before.
What are some of the challenges and even discrimination that you had to overcome in your career in public office as a Filipino American? And secondly, how has that Filipino heritage been a source of strength through those challenges?
Well, thank you. Being a Filipino American is a source of pride, strength, inspiration, and power for me. It's something that roots me and grounds me, and gives me strength and drives me forward. And it's also something that for others, it's seen as depending on them, and this says more about everything about them and nothing about Filipino Americans. It's a point for discrimination, racism, belittling, erasure, and it takes tons of forms in tons of places, tons of times. It's always, and whether it be me being birthered by a political opponent, literally having the exact same claim that was made against Obama being made against me, to that somehow I wasn't a U.S. citizen, and that I'm this sort of trope that we're always visiting, never at home, always the outsider, the challenger of the status quo, the person who doesn't belong. Or folks who, despite the opportunities that I've had to go to some incredible educational institutions, will say I'm inexperienced and not ready to lead and not able to lead. And so that happens all the time. And from boyhood to adulthood, from being a student to being the Attorney General, and all the times in between, and it's just part of, unfortunately, what leaders of color deal with. And it's not something to dwell on, but it's also not something to ignore. It's a reality of the world that we live in and lead in. And to me, it makes me stronger. It makes me fight harder. It makes me more resilient. It makes me want to push and lead in the best ways that I can and be as effective as possible. But and that's where that inspiration comes in. You know, thinking about leaders like Larry Itliong and Philip Veracruz and the struggles that they had. They don't compare at all. Mine don't compare at all to what they had to go through. And I think a lot about that Delano Community Hall in Delano, California, when all of the farm workers were called in for a meeting and they had to decide what they were going to do. And they were voting on whether they would have and begin the Delano grape strike of 1965. And the easy path would have been to not go on strike, to continue to work and earn money and send it home to their families overseas and to support themselves, or they could have chosen the more difficult path, but the just path, the right path, the path that would transform the farm labor movement and provide support and dignity and respect to farm workers that had never been earned before. And they chose the hard path. And sometimes the right and just path is not the easy one. You know, that Filipino heritage and that Filipino story of always fighting for justice really inspires me and keeps me going.
I'm going to violate that trial lawyer adage about never asking a question you don't know the answer to, but here goes. I've been told that there's a sign in your office that you've carried with you that you once found in a California hotel, and I was wondering if you could share with the audience what that sign says and how it's been a source of motivation for you.
Yeah, thank you. I have a sign in my office. It's a framed photograph from a 1920s Stockton hotel lobby. And the sign says, "Positively no Filipinos allowed." That's what the sign was in the lobby. And it's a reminder to me of the discrimination, the racism, the struggle, the hate that the Filipino American community and so many communities endured. And also a reminder that we don't live in that world today, that conditions have improved. The arc of justice, our arc of history has bent towards justice. We've made progress. And today in California, we're not just allowed, we belong. And you know, this is our state, this is our country. We helped build it. We have every right to be here and thrive here and serve here and raise our families here as any other one of the incredibly diverse communities that make up this great state and this great nation. It's a reminder of the continuum of progress that we're on, that you can never rest and you can never take it for granted. You always need to be vigilant, and you always need to fight. You need agency to push forward, to move progress to the next level. So it's a reminder of where we've been and where we can go if we keep pushing for and agitating for change. And I've had that photo in my office for my entire career as an elected public official, and it continues to inspire me and drive me forward today. You might be a mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Your comments about just needing to be eternally vigilant seem particularly salient coming out of the pandemic, when our community witnessed some horrific attacks on Asian Americans, stoked no doubt by political rhetoric and other things that were happening in the world. And I know that this has been a top priority of you and your office over the last year, trying to combat this form of these hate crimes. I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about those efforts, but also just address those in our audience who may still feel unsafe about going out into the community and uncertain whether they do belong.
You know, the rise in hate, including anti-API hate, has been unacceptable, inexcusable. It's been horrific. It's been such a point of pain and anxiety and fear for so many. And the data and the statistics show that the increases today, the level of hate that we're seeing in California is at the same levels as the height in the recent height that we saw right after 9/11. For 2 years ago, for Asian Americans, the hate incidents or hate crimes went up 107%. And then the year after that, another 177%. Those are the highest increases against any group. And there's a lot of reasons for it. One really important reason, in my view, is how leaders speak and what they say. That matters. And when you have the leader of the free world using terms of racism and hate and xenophobia and discrimination, then unfortunately you will see the impact. When you say things like Wuhan virus and Kung flu and China virus, and give license and permission, maybe even encouragement for folks to take out their frustrations and anxiety on Asian Americans, that's a problem. And it's unacceptable. We can't, that can't be who we are. And so in California, we've been pushing back. I started the Racial Justice Bureau to address hate crimes, to stand against the forces of hate and against racial injustice in all its forms, including hate crimes. We've been working with local leaders throughout the state and big cities and beyond to set up infrastructure to support communities. We've encouraged district attorneys' offices to set up hate crime units to work with impacted communities, to work with them on prevention, accountability, and victim services. We've worked with community groups to expand and increase through funding that we provided at the state of California level, their services to those who've been impacted with culturally competent support and healing, language access, trauma-informed care. And so we are working hard to address the rise in hate. And, for me, this is personal. And, so I say to the API community, I see you, I value you, I am you. What you are going through, I'm going through it in real time with you. I'm worried about my 85-year-old mom doing everyday things, going for a walk, going shopping, running an errand, and whether she will be next, the next victim of a horrific, violent hate crime. And as the Attorney General, we're standing firm and standing strong to address hate incidents, hate crimes, and to push back against hate in all its forms.
We're all, aware of recent events in Los Angeles in particular that have given rise to a lot of concern about the state of race relations in this city in particular, but also throughout the state. I don't want to necessarily have a conversation about what happened in City Hall, but more generally, should we feel optimistic or pessimistic about the direction in which race relations are going? And maybe more importantly, what can we as members of the AAPI community to try to bridge racial division in the same way that you were describing those divisions got bridged during the United Farm Workers movement?
Let me just first say that we all had access to and heard the horrific comments that were made. They were inexcusable and unacceptable. They were painful and hurtful. They were reprehensible and abhorrent and dehumanizing. And they don't belong in any context or circle, and certainly not coming out of the mouths of publicly elected officials with the duty to serve those um, that they've been elected to represent. I will say that the firm and strong and clear response by so many gives me the it gives me the belief that we are, despite this very public, very painful setback, filled with folks with the right hearts and the right values and the right commitment to working with one another. I think it's always important to refocus on the fact that success of communities that have been historically overlooked or been historically the victims of discrimination or oppression or racism, and have had obstacles and haven't had enough pathways for opportunity, that their success of the various groups that have had those experiences is not a zero-sum game. You don't need to have in your mind the belief that the only way I can succeed is if you fail. I can succeed and you can succeed. My community can succeed and your community can succeed at the same time. In fact, historically, that's been the way that it's happened, where we work together and rise together and extend hands of partnership and collaboration and coalition building, and together we rise. That's the story of the Delano Grape Strike of 1965. That's the story of the farm workers. That's why it was so powerful, because we rejected the zero-sum fallacy and embraced the reality and the truth and the truism that we will only rise if we do it together. So this is a reminder of that. And I hope and believe that more communities will recommit and double down on that principle and that belief. And we certainly see the pain and the failure in adopting that zero-sum fallacy.
You and your wife, Mia, who you referenced earlier, have been so exemplary in your commitment to public service. But as you know, as well as anyone, running for elected office is not for the faint of heart. And so for those in our audience who are particularly interested in public policy or trying to make a difference in our communities, do you have any advice for how each of us can think about making a difference during these challenging times?
You know, my advice is do what you love, do what you're passionate about, pursue the thing that gets you up in the morning and drives you forward and excites you. And sometimes that requires you to go into places and spaces you've never been before that might feel uncomfortable, but go. Follow your heart, follow your passion, follow the call to action or call to duty that you feel. We need people who are going to step up and serve. And the environment in many places is for service is toxic. It's extreme. People are deep in their respective corners, and all the reason we need thoughtful leaders, value-based leaders, leaders who want to serve and want to help, who are there for the only reason there is to be there, to make the lives of everyday people better, to serve the public, not for ego or for glory or for titles, but to serve. And now more than ever, we need people who are going to withstand the difficult environment and despite all of that, serve to the best of their ability, stay focused on why they're there, the people that sent them there, the people whose lives will be improved because of the work that they do, and who will step up. And look, it's natural to be anxious and reluctant. I wasn't sure. I hand wrung forever about it. I wasn't sure if I was going to run. I didn't want to give up my family or my privacy. I liked anonymity. I loved being a dad and a husband, and still do. They're the most important titles I'll ever have, the ones that make me the happiest. And the worry that my kids will be exposed, or my wife would be exposed, or I would, in, as well is something that I thought about, and you should too. But I'll say, as someone who crossed that threshold and made that decision, it's a no-brainer. The ability and opportunity to serve and to make people's lives better far outweighs any of the potential setbacks and detriments that come with the territory. Every job has its good parts and its not so good parts. The good parts in public service are incredible, are powerful, and if you want to be part of those and want to help others, I say follow your heart.
In a few minutes, we're going to transition to questions from the audience, but I wanted to just ask one or two more questions just about how you do it all on a personal level. So for many of us, at least I'm speaking for myself, if the kids leave with their socks on and I haven't forgotten to pack their lunch, that's a huge success. And you have 3 kids, a wife, a dog that I think we've heard a little from during this presentation. And how do you do it all in terms of being the father you want to be, and then also the spouse, while also enduring the incredible sacrifices and burdens of being in public office?
Thank you for that question. And let me just first say, my dog Lego has total FOMO, fear of missing out. He's like, what's going on? Or maybe I need to get involved. Maybe I need to get involved. That's him. You'll probably have not heard the last of him, unfortunately. And a couple special appearances already. I don't know how to answer that question. As I mentioned, I love my wife. I love my kids. They're everything to me. I love being a dad. I love being a husband. I love having an incredible family. I love my extended family. I love that my mom and my mother-in-law live nearby and are in my life, and that my kids know their grandparents. And that just is. That's who I am. I can't imagine doing anything else besides that. And with that, we all have our professions and our missions and our roles to play in this world. And the one that I wanted for me was to help as many people as I could, as often as I could, and to do that at the highest level that I would be allowed and accepted and able to do that. And so I've been in public service, starting with the healthcare district board in the city of Alameda, and then vice mayor of the city, and then the state assembly, and now attorney general. And every time it's been a privilege, it's been an honor to serve. I felt that we got great things done with the people that I work with. I was proud of those that I served with, and the accomplishments that we collectively accomplished and were able to deliver. And I believe that there's no replacement for hard work, for get after it, for an engine to push and drive and to stay active. And I try to have an active day every day, and then have another one the next day, and build on it. And always with a goal towards what do people in this state need? What do the people who elected me require? What kind of champion do they need today to help them? What problem can I solve today? And so it doesn't feel like work to me. I love it. I enjoy it. It's fulfilling, invigorating, rewarding. It makes me happy. It gives me energy. And so not everyone's able to do the things that they love. But I am, and I love what I do. And I'm living my California dream, serving as many people in this state as I can.
Thank you so much, Attorney General Bonta. We've learned so much from your comments, and just greatly appreciate your thoughts on all of these issues, including your upbringing and why you love what you do. So I think, Glenn, this is the time where we can transition to some questions from the audience. Just by way of full disclosure, I didn't preview a single question. I just asked Attorney General Bonta before we got on the Zoom together. So that was completely spontaneous and genuine. So thank you again. Glenn, did you want to try to run the questions?
Yes, I will. I just want to ask them if you could turn that camera on.
Oh.
So that I can appear on the screen. So what we'd like to do now is open it up to some questions. So if there's anyone in the audience here physically with us that has a question, there's a microphone set up in the back of the room that you may use. In addition, if you have a question on Zoom, Jasmine is monitoring those questions and will repeat those questions so that Beong and the AG can hear them. I also have a list of questions that were previously submitted. So great, thank you very much. Some questions that were previously submitted. So let me just start with one specifically from a student. So you know, and you mentioned, AG Bonta, that this event was co-sponsored by our Gould School of Law, with both you and Beong being law students as well. Is there a specific advice that you can give to our law students in the audience as they are completing their law degrees here in the classroom or at USC that they could use and maybe learn from? Maybe I would ask that question to you, AG Bonta, first, and then Beong, if you also would like to share from some of your insights, having been a law student as well.
Sure. I'll say, do what you want to do, not what expectations have been set for you by others. And let me share a little bit more about that. When I was in law school, there was a set of tracks before us that were wonderful opportunities, if those are what people wanted to do: clerkships, working at private firms, teaching tracks, and a lot of students, that was the right fit, and they pursued those. For others, though, that isn't necessarily what they wanted to do, and they, I think, maybe still felt pressure to do those things because that was what was being talked about. That's who was recruiting. That's what those were the big gets among fellow students when they got a plum clerkship or a great firm job offer or a teaching opportunity. And every one of you is different. Everyone, you came to law school for a reason. There's things that you love and there's things that you don't love, and do the thing that you want to do. It's your life, your career. You're the one that's going to do the work. I believe life is too short. If you can help it to do something that's not what you want to do. Go directly to what you want to do as soon as you know it. And it could be public interest, it could be public service, it could be something that no one else is doing, and that's okay. It's what you want to do. And so try to make decisions about your future without feeling the pressure of what others' expectations might be of you, and do what you love and do what you're passionate about.
I could not say it any better. And I think we all know of people who go to law school with the goal of using law to further social justice, and they get sidetracked and by things that they're not as passionate about, and it's sad to see. And the one thing I would add to Attorney General Bonta's comments, building on what he was saying earlier about coalition building, is what you're there to learn isn't just in the books in front of you, it's also in the classmate to your left and the classmate on the right, and their backgrounds, their experiences, their viewpoints. And it's so important to engage with the people around you, because when you go to a special place, whether it's Yale or a USC or a Harvard, what's special is not just the person at the front of the room, but it's the class that's been assembled, and there's so much to learn from your classmates and so much to benefit from maintaining those relationships as you progress in your career.
That's terrific advice. Thank you, Beong. Thank you, AG Bonta. The next question is something for the AG that you touched upon a little bit when it comes to the area of partisanship, which seems to be dominating the political stage, especially on a national level. What are some of the tools, approaches that you would recommend, AG Bonta? You mentioned about the importance of building alliances. But if we want to try to find common ground or try to solve an issue or create change, knowing that there is this divide, this partisanship that exists, is there something that you've found successful in helping to bridge that divide or to address this polarization that exists in the country?
You know, for me, I believe in my experience has confirmed that if you seek common ground, you can find it. You have to try. You have to try to find places where you can work together. And there's some where there's little likelihood. And so I don't focus on those. But there are big swaths where there's great likelihood that we can work across partisan differences across the aisle to solve a problem and make progress. And, you know, when you sort of think about our country and the great people that comprise it, we agree on most things. We want to have safe streets. We want to have great schools for our kids. We want healthcare for ourselves and our family. We want economic opportunity and upward mobility. We want a planet for tomorrow. We want a roof over our head. And but we end up, even though there's so much that we have in common, we end up talking about the things that are really the wedge issues, abortion or guns. And I'm very clear about where I am on those things, and also very clear that there are folks on the other side who have a very different perspective, who I'm not likely to change their mind. But there's tons of places where we can work together. And I don't say this as you know, theoretically or hypothetically. I did this with my Republican colleagues in the legislature. I literally would have an idea and go talk to them and say, here's an idea, I want you to consider it. If you're interested, let's work on it together. Let's co-author. And so I co-authored bills on cannabis with Republicans. I co-authored bills on protecting consumers from surprise medical bills with Republicans, because I tried and they tried, because we looked at an opportunity for common ground, and we found it, and we made it work. So it's doable, but in the environment that we're in, it is very extreme. We're not just in our ideological corners, we're sometimes divorced from and untethered to facts and truth and science. And that's a problem when we're, you know, there was a time where you were, that phrase, you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. Now people think they're entitled to their own facts too, but they're not. Facts are facts. They don't change. They're immovable. And through that all, I think it's really important that more people try and seek and find common ground. It's there for the taking if you look.
Great, thank you very much. Next, we'd like to take a question from the audience. If you can just quickly identify yourself and ask your question, whether it's addressed to AG Bonta or to Beong.
Great. My name is Matthew Asada. I'm a fourth-generation Japanese American, and congratulations here, Attorney General, for the work that you've done. That last question about bipartisanship is really interesting, especially in this month celebrating Filipino Americans. I wonder if you've done anything with your colleague from Utah, another Filipino American Attorney General from LA, Sean Reyes, in that lane. There's cross Attorney Generals here in the United States. But my question is about the Voting Rights Act. And I know that this might be a little bit more on the federal level, but you kind of referred to the what's happening here at the Los Angeles City Council, and I think your office has made some comments about, you know, looking into this matter. And the use of race in redistricting and districting, And obviously the intention of the Voting Rights Act when it was passed back in the 60s was to look at preserving majority minority districts or having representation. What's interesting about California, obviously going to a majority minority state, is what does it look like for the future? What do we need to do to move towards maybe what role should race have in redistricting or in creating electoral districts today? Just today in the LA Times, there's an article about a California bill that passed that created this independent commission for the county of Los Angeles. What do you think needs to be done here for the city itself?
You know, there's of course a lot of pain and hurt after hearing the audio recordings, and then also a deep amount of distrust in the system and whether it has worked the way it's supposed to work with voter rights and civil rights and constitutional rights of people and communities being protected. And so that's why we launched our investigation that we announced almost 2 weeks ago now. It'll be 2 weeks this Wednesday, to look into the redistricting process in the city of Los Angeles and whether all of the applicable laws were followed and whether all of the civil, constitutional, and voting rights were honored and respected. And so we're going to look, and we're looking at things like the Voting Rights Act. We're looking at things like the Fair Maps Act in the state of California. There are processes, and there's both procedural and substantive components that will apply, and it's obviously it's important that there are communities of interest be not inappropriately or unlawfully harmed or undermined, that voter voice not be illegally diluted. And so we're going to look at those and other issues as we conduct our investigation. At the same time, people, this has raised a policy issue, which has a potential policy response as to how should we be redistricting? Who should be redistricting? Should it be independent commissions like the one at the state of California state level and in San Diego, or should it be elected public officials, as was happening in Los Angeles? And I think there's a growing number of policymakers and leaders who believe that independent commissions are more part of our future than elected officials doing the redistricting. So I think we're going to see some legislation introduced in that regard. I think it could be very wide-ranging and have broad application. And I think that is sparking a very important debate about how things get done and the process that can lead to the most fair outcomes and the best results for communities of interest and for voters.
So question that is somewhat related came from the Asian American Pacific Islander Faculty and Staff Association, is related to data disaggregation. And we know, Agent Bonta, even before you took office, this was an important cause for you. Can you describe for the AAPI community and for other communities why this is important, or what role you think that this can play in policy and legislation and creating equity?
Accurate data is important, and disaggregated data is accurate data. With disaggregated data, you can see what was previously concealed. That becomes revealed, and you make visible what was once invisible. And if you have monolithic aggregated data, you miss entire experiences that are hidden in that data that is not pulled out and teased out and focused on. So, we always, in policy and in politics, we talk about data-driven policies, evidence-based solutions. You need the data and you need the evidence. And you get that with disaggregated data. And so in our API community, there are many experiences, and they're hugely diverse experiences. Our Southeast Asian community might have very different experiences than others in the API community. Our Filipino American community might have, and across different issues, education, health, environmental justice, what have you. And it's important to sort of see what's happening, so then you can determine what sort of interventions or solutions you want to implement.
Great, thank you very much. So we have a couple more questions. So we're gonna go to one in the room, and then we have another question from online that's gonna be shared. And you're able to hear the questions. I know you're unable to see the people who are here in the room, but I hope the volume is okay for you, Bonta.
I can hear the questions. I don't think I can see the person asking.
Yeah, okay. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, hello. Thank you for coming, AG Bonta. As a Filipino myself, I'm particularly inspired. My name is Celine, and I'm a Troy Philippines member and also a journalism student here at USC. I really resonated with your discussion of how you not only see the hate in the API community being a threat, but you also feel it in real time. And I also really resonated with how you talked about the importance of building a coalition and coming together as a community. And with that, I wanted to ask you if you heard about the Roque family case that happened back in May, which is this Filipino family of 3. They were attacked in a drive-through McDonald's in May of this year, actually. And it's been months since the attacks on the mom and the dad on the case, and yet they still have yet to receive justice. But the community's been coming together to really bring attention to it and really push for charges and push for help from the Philippine consulate. So I wanted to ask you, since you talked a lot about community, what do you think are the responsibilities of the community to address the Roque case and similar anti-Asian hate cases like this?
Thank you. Yes, I'm very well aware of the Roque family and the incident that occurred, and I think it's very important for community to be involved, raise their voice, express their views, work with law enforcement and the district attorney's office in the jurisdiction that the incident occurred to express support for the victim and to demand justice, and to work with the law enforcement community that's sort of putting the case together and doing the full investigation and preparing the package for consideration by the DA, and then to work with the DA as well when the DA makes a charging decision. And that's, this sort of exact scenario is what I had in mind when I was encouraging district attorneys' offices across the 58 counties in California to set up their own hate crimes unit to liaise with and communicate with community that has been impacted. Here, the Filipino American community and allies who feel appropriately hurt and in pain by what happened. Hate crimes are not just crimes against a person or people, it's crimes against a community because of the targeting of the individual based on their membership in that community. And so I really think it's critical that a hate crimes unit with district attorneys and other team members be talking to the community, sharing with them, how the law works and what the possible outcomes are here, and providing a opportunity to listen and hear from community members who've been hurt and in pain. Also, besides this single case, looking at ways for education and prevention in the future, healing for victims, and providing opportunities for victim services to be secured, and for victims to heal and benefit from those services. So I think there's a lot that the community can ask of the law enforcement and the district attorney's office in a scenario like this, and a lot that the law enforcement and the district attorney's office can be providing in response.
Thank you.
Okay, we are basically out of time now. We did have a question. AG Bonta, if you could stay for, I don't know if you have 30 seconds more. Oh, so, okay, great. So Jasmine, if you could quickly ask the question, then I just would like Beong, if he has any closing remarks, and AG Bonta, you'll get the last word. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so this question on Zoom came from Alan. It's, I believe, for Beong and AG Bonta. So much of the hate and racist attacks are driven and perpetuated via social media. How are you and the AG's office specifically addressing this, knowing that the EU and others are far ahead of the US in terms of legal consequences? Here at USC, we're creating interdisciplinary open courses for use by anyone in media literacy with the Annenberg School of Journalism, the Shoah Foundation, and Center Edge at the Rossier School of Education to be launched this coming spring. It would be great to get the AG's office's input and from Beong as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. And, I really do agree that social media and social media platforms, the way the algorithms work, the standards that they have for what's on their platform and what's not, the behavioral standards that they have, that's all deeply important for, I believe, the future of our democracy and the safety of our communities included. And we have really encouraged platforms to be vigilant and clear and firm on what's acceptable behavior and what's not, and to enforce and deplatform people who violate those rules and who risk and threaten people's safety. We of course have challenges with what they can be forced to do because of federal law and First Amendment and free speech challenges. So there's what we are encouraging them to do and the standards that we ask them to implement and enforce. And then there's if they don't agree to that, there are some limits currently under existing law with respect to what we can force them to do. But I do think this is an ongoing issue where we're going to be exploring ways to create the safest environments for all communities and all participants, and looking at the full extent of the law and what it allows for. There have been some really important contributions that have been made this year for that are the law in California now that are, for example, for the safety of children, based on some of the UK's world-leading approaches to how to keep children on platforms safe. And I think there's more to come that we can build on from there.
Right, and Beong, if you'd answer that question from the university standpoint for social media, and then any last comment, and then I'll just turn it back over to the AG for one final remark.
Yeah, just very briefly, I really appreciated those comments by AG Bonta. And I also appreciated the call out and the question about all the great work being done at Annenberg and the Shoah Foundation. I would just say that universities are going to be a great kind of resource and partner in the efforts that AG Bonta described, not just to understanding how disinformation, misinformation, and hate are spread over social media, but also as a place where people can learn to engage in civil discourse and dialogue, even when they profoundly disagree on subjects. And that's something I think that we at USC are very focused on, recognizing always the importance of the value of free speech. There's a lot more could be said about this topic, but in the interest of time, I simply want to say thank you so much, Attorney General Bonta, for taking the time out of your busy schedule. There are so many things we didn't get a chance to talk about, including soccer and any other pastimes that you engage in. But
don't get me started. Do we have another half hour? My favorite EPL teams.
Yeah.
And the World Cup coming up.
Thank you so much again, and I'll just please leave it to you to provide any rebuttal or summation that you'd like to provide.
Yeah, no rebuttal needed. Just a thank you as well. I echo the expression of gratitude and appreciation to have spent this time with you today. I appreciate all that you're doing in your own careers and to contribute one thing I always think about is the future of our state and of our nation, and how everyone has a role to play, and every person can move the needle and make a huge difference. And especially those like you who are, the most talented and social justice oriented, public service oriented folks. We need you to change the world. The world needs changing. And it's not just going to happen on its own. People change the world. You change the world. It's people with a vision for a different world, a better world, with less injustice and more opportunity and more equity that will do it. And so, that's you. And so I'm honored to have spent the time with you. I thank you for all that you're doing and will do. Sometimes people say for young folks, you're the leaders of tomorrow. That's true, but you're the leaders of today. You don't need to wait. You don't need to wait your turn. You can change the world in fundamental, transformational ways now. So I look forward to that change, and I'll be right by your side.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, AG Bonta, for your inspiring words and your leadership. We'll see you all again, and welcome you back on campus anytime. Take care.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
So for everyone in the room, there is a complimentary free lunchbox right outside. Please grab sandwich and salads. Thank you all for coming.
Great event. Grab one of these lunches.